from the 2000s, the Galacticos, Los Galacticos were launched. That's when soccer becomes different.
Yeah.
They get David Beckham to the Galacticos. Man United, yes, is winning championships, right?
Yeah.
But, they're building a brand because it's a sport, but it becomes entertainment when Beckham goes to Madrid. Figo,
Zidane.
with Zidane.
Yeah. Ronaldo.
So they amalgamate, Ballon d'Or winners galore. It's probably the most stacked team still.
Yeah, Galacticos as they know.
Yeah, exactly. And so when we get to that place, the game is different. And one can argue Florentino Perez created this world, the current president of Real Madrid, in that he comes from a branding background, a marketing background. He empowers the marketeers and the branding people in the business, and they take over, creating the Galacticos brand.
I'm healing. Today's a new day.
Welcome to another episode of the Business Agenda Podcast, episode 11 to be specific. I go by the name of Cash, aka Uncle Cash, joined as always by my fellow co-host, Miza, aka Itumeleng or Miza, Itumeleng, Miza, the other way around. And of course, we've got my good friend Tabo, aka Vinyl_T. We are also joined by a very special guest, Mr. Simba Mabasha, for a topic that I've been wanting to discuss for a long time. Just in general, it's so good how we came to this topic. But before we venture into the topic is sports funding, sports finance, and all the good things around the business side of sports and how it works. And we'll tell you how we came about and decided to unpack this particular subject. As you know, Business Agenda likes to get into the nuts and bolts of some of these topics. And also just like to mention that going forward, you're going to be seeing more content from the Business Agenda team. We came to a conscious decision that we do not want to limit to just episode recordings, because audio and visual, you're going to be seeing more material coming out from us. Like, we have so many great discussions within the group. Sometimes as we hang out as friends, so we said we don't even need to limit just to episode recordings. So look out for that. And for those of you like premium content in short and reasonable length, we'll be doing that. But gentlemen, as always, around
hey,
the room,
why are you making me happy? Did you just say premium content?
Yes, premium content. Premium content.
So we're selling it.
Yeah,
Not the normal one.
yeah,
Wait,
not the normal.
so are we selling it?
Yeah, so look out for our Patron accounts coming soon.
Okay, I like that. I like that.
So for those of you who are really hooked on the content, just know, if you really support us, reach down into your pockets, all this equipment. And our good friend, as always, we'd like to acknowledge the people who listen to and watch our content. We don't take the numbers and the views we get for granted. And one integral cog of the team, you never get to see him, but anytime we get these great visuals, it's because of one, Tabi the Don, our sound engineer. Thank you to him. And also thank you, definitely last but not least, to the man behind our visuals, the great Tsepo,
Tsepo the Great.
Tsepo the Great, budding entrepreneur, decoder light, or whatever the term is for people who've read Jay-Z's Decoder book. So I'd like to acknowledge him, having recently read the book. Gentlemen, how are you?
You're good, man.
Yeah,
I've been tired because we took a little bit long to come record.
Yeah.
We had a birthday celebration for 3 weeks.
Wow.
And the man is responsible for that 3-week birthday celebration is none other than one and only Mr. Itumeleng Miza himself.
Wow.
Yeah, at least we come to the podcast wiser.
Lots of knowledge gained. Yeah, I saw the tweets and the jabs. I think by the 3rd week of the celebration, the gents were starting to feel the effects. Like, it was about
it's getting personal now.
Yeah. But anyhow, yeah, man, yeah. So yeah, I think we took a little bit long to come record. I was actually laughing the other day because I was like, I can't believe we actually don't have a plan for Women's Day. It's Women's Month, and we're gonna come record about sports, and I was like, you know what, maybe it's a good thing. Sometimes don't actually involve ourselves in women's stuff.
Yeah, you give them the space to have. Yeah. It's actually a good point to make, because sometimes, let them run with their things. I've seen people try, because it's Women's Month, we have to be there and just do a terrible job. But it's like, gents, give them space to do their own things. But I think what's good was, obviously we normally not try to have gaps this long, but I think because of the topic we are going to uncover today, and they were going to structure, it gave us a bit more time just to get stuck into it, But besides the cold and the rates and the things, Miza, I would love to We should actually give Miza a monologue section where you can rant about rates and
But actually, I think we must come record now. We'll record again shortly after this.
Yeah.
The economic one.
There's a lot to unpack there that's happened
Yeah,
since the last time.
just because this. Yeah.
Because hey, there's a lot. Hey, Minister of Finance to just ruin my week. Anyway,
Because of the scandal.
Yeah. So markets didn't really like that. So yeah, it was not.
It wasn't great. Yeah. That's what was the challenge.
That's what happens when you don't get a happy ending.
We really did that to our soundboard. Yeah, but so look, gents, just so I think to get into it, just a bit of a brief introduction on our guest, Simba. Simba's obviously I think Simba's a serial entrepreneur. That's how I've known him. Simba, if I just want to correct myself, when was Wabona, the inception of Wabona, before I explain what Wabona was?
We launched in 2011, but we started the business in 2008.
Okay, so basically Wabona was 2008, these gentlemen decided to start a streaming platform. So think Netflix in 2008, but getting exclusive rights for movies like your Neria, African content. So if you think of the movies, that's Sarafina and them that Mnet, We Are The Magic had back in the day.
Okay.
So, I mean, in terms of the timing, way ahead of the curve. For those of you who know Simu, he was part of the process as well. They were all both in Cape Town. So did that, great story there. And I think I will let him unpack as we talk his story, his background. And also, I think it's good. The reason we have him as a guest is we've had many discussions and we have a passion for TV and documentaries to the point where, funny story, we set up a group for Game of Thrones because in our high school group, WhatsApp group, too many people were taking long to watch the Game of Thrones episode. Us TV junkies were there 3 a.m. So for the sake of spoilers, that group was started in, I think, 2014, and it became a group of kindred spirits in terms of people who like content creation, the TV space, and just knowledge in general, So I think you probably saw, or you guys didn't get access to, but before camera, we just discussed a wide range of topics because similar in that, same thing with teaser, just people are saps for knowledge and like to learn and get things. So I always learn a lot from this man. So one thing we share is passion for sports and sports financing, just everything sports. We've watched many ESPN documentaries, shared things over the past, and it's just mind-boggling how the world of sports just transcended from normal businesses to the behemoths that they are today. That's why you now hear the mind-blowing funds. And I think as you're probably going to see on the prelogue that we're recording, is what started this discussion is what's currently happening at Barcelona, of which, funny enough, in the room, myself, Tees and Simba are all Madridsters. So this is going to be a happy day for just throwing jabs at Barcelona for free. but Simba, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it. I think what we want to uncover, like, in terms of a good place to start before I hand over to you, is just like, what does sports financing mean? I think a good question, if you look at what's happening right now at Barcelona, probably I think what highlighted attention was the whole Frankie de Jong transfer saga to Manchester United. They're trying to sell a player, they owe him wages, but in the midst of that debacle between the club and the player and his agent for the wages, they're signing a lot of high-profile players, and they've had impositions, sanctions, if you want to call it that, from La Liga, but they've managed to sign Frank Kessie from AC Milan. Lewandowski is a top player. He's not cheap, even though he was on the last tail end of his Bayern contract. So how does that happen? What is the world of sports like in terms of just that? What does financial fair play even mean? Because UEFA, they speak of it, but sometimes when you look how it's implemented between some of the fines for Man City, Teaser's main team, or a PSG, does that have any influence? And then you look at the people who are bankrolling some of the bigger teams.
Hey, you're asking a lot of questions.
Yeah, no, I'm
trying to make a mental note.
Yeah. Sorry, I think
we still need an intro.
Exactly. So I think those are by way of questions.
That's the excitement.
Yes, the excitement. But the way of questions, that's exactly what we're going to look to uncover in this particular episode. So I think it was just good to just give background in terms of how these questions came about. What was the starting point? Because there is a lot in terms of, if you look at how businesses are run across different countries in broadcasting, the owners of some of these franchises in America and football, and then, how are they transcending the actual sports? Because that's just, it's a simple thing that I'm leading up to, is basically how you have a Manchester United who Mize is a fan, and they haven't, Lord knows, the last time they won any trophies.
Whatever.
But they're still a profitable business. Then we'll look at Glazer family ownership and all those good things, But yeah, so we can get into gentlemen. That's just one thing. As I said, we want to make sense of it for the sake of people who are going to watch the episode. Yeah.
Who do you support, Simba?
I support Madrid as my primary team, soccer team.
Is it?
Yeah.
All right. And what did you think of this window season, I suppose, for Barcelona there?
I think we have to take a step back and look at how we got here. And I think it's important to maybe look at the history of sports financing. The model is American, and let's say it begins with baseball. Then it goes to ESPN in the 80s when they started buying, college football rights. Basically monetizing and unlocking value for small places in Connecticut, small leagues, the Big Ten, the Big East. Then the NFL comes into the big daddy, right?
Yes.
The NFL recently signed a 10-year deal for $100 billion.
Yes.
That's the biggest, by far the biggest sports league on the planet. And when sport became entertainment, it now had a different value. It became a different asset class, right? And from the 2000s, the Galacticos, Los Galacticos were launched. That's when soccer becomes different.
Yeah.
When they get David Beckham to the Galacticos. Man United, yes, is winning championships, right?
Yeah.
But, they're building a brand because it's a sport, but it becomes entertainment when Beckham goes to Madrid. Figo,
Zidane.
with Zidane.
Yeah.
Ronaldo.
So they amalgamate, Ballon d'Or winners galore. It's probably the most stacked team still.
Yeah,
to this day.
Galacticos, as they know.
Yeah, exactly. And so when we get to that place, the game is different. And one can argue Florentino Perez created this world. The current president of Real Madrid, in that he comes from a branding background, a marketing background. He empowers the marketeers and the branding people in the business, and they take over, creating the Galacticos brand. Right? That creates in different worlds now. Man U taps into that. Ed Woodward comes in. Another, business minded, not a soccer brain.
Yeah. But he came with the acquisition, right?
Yeah, he came with the Glazer
So
family.
then they changed those dynamics. Changed the playgrounds, and no pun intended. But Barcelona, most teams are owned by their fans. They're community based, etc., etc. They're not businesses.
Yes.
They're businesses.
It represents the area, locations. Yeah.
Until private equity or individual money comes into the business, when they become luxury assets, right? Roman Abramovich becomes and the Glazers become the first guys like, no, we can pay 400 million, 200 million for these assets, and we can now time to monetize them and get a return. Because notoriously, soccer clubs are always bankrupt. Notoriously, they try not to make a profit, for tax reasons.
Yeah.
And so, let's fast forward to now. Barcelona is in debt for 1.2 billion euros. How did they get there? They're paying Leo, one of the biggest Leo
Yeah,
Messi,
that was a crazy
one of the
salary.
biggest contracts in the history of the game. I mean, Leo Messi career earnings must be close to $1 billion.
So can I ask? Because I like that scenario. With the Galacticos era, when they brought Beckham demanded image rights.
Image rights. That changes the game
Yeah.
because now he's not defining himself as a different asset type.
Yeah.
Right? He's not only a soccer player who sells Predators, Adidas Predators. He sells his image to
Yeah.
Gucci, to Calvin Klein, etc., etc. He is now redefining what it means to be a soccer player and then what it means to be a soccer team. It's very different thing because now Adidas are paying him for his looks, not necessarily for his football. He
Yes.
sells shoes, but he also sells shirts, but he sells perfume, he sells cars, etc., etc.
Yes.
They become different assets themselves.
Correct,
The
yeah.
players become assets, right?
Yeah.
And Beckham had bad boy looks. He was England captain. He becomes a brand unto his own. Who is next there? It's now Cristiano Ronaldo. And Leo Messi.
Yeah.
The last 25 years has been these three players. Two are Adidas and two are Nike. And it's important to mention the merchandising teams in here because they fuel this market, right?
Yeah.
Because they're paying these guys hundreds of millions. They're taking the Michael Jordan Air Jordan model and putting it to soccer with
into
David
soccer.
Beckham with Predators.
Yeah.
And then Zizou with Predators, Ronaldo, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So now we're in a place where Barcelona in a ton of debt because of FIFA fair play. And where does this fair play idea come from? The Super League, right? If you look at last year's debacle of the Super League, the 8 biggest European clubs will say, we want to make our own money, guys. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? And they're right, because if you look at La Liga, Barcelona and Madrid were making 85% of the profits, right? So it was unfair. It was unfair because they're taking the majority of the TV rights, they're taking the best players, they're winning La Ligas, they're winning Champions Leagues. And
Copa del Rey.
Do you, as a point, do you agree with that model? Because I mean, I think the Premier League shares across all the clubs.
Yes.
The TV rights of the Premier League are shared equally across all the clubs.
Yeah.
Whereas with La Liga, Barcelona and Real Madrid get more. Do you agree with
I
it?
don't
Or
agree
what's
with
your
that.
stance?
The La Liga position was foolish.
Okay.
Because it only makes sense if it's a cartel. And let's take
Yeah.
the NFL. The NFL is a cartel.
Yeah.
Right? And the NFL, why those assets have appreciated in value 2-3x over the last 10 years. The NBA, the same thing. Everyone shares. Right? It's a fancy way of saying OPEC.
Yeah, you gotta
Right?
share. Yeah.
And so if you don't share with the 20 teams and make it fair in some way, because the NBA, soccer doesn't have a salary cap and soccer doesn't have a draft system. The
But the NFL does.
Yeah, the NFL, NBA.
NBA,
They mitigate teams becoming too dominant by having those two categories. That's why Golden State can win, 4 or 5 championships. They built through the draft. The same can be said for Cleveland, the same can be said for these other smaller market teams, San Antonio,
And can I assume then that means the players usually then keep their image rights, for lack of a better word, because the players are able to make more money outside, Jordan, the shoes,
Exactly. And I think that Michael Jordan decision in the 80s is a very important decision for how we get here, in that he managed to commoditize himself.
Correct, yeah.
Right? And he commoditized in the form of shoes, but then the form of his image. He was selling anything and everything until he retired. He was the biggest sports brand in the world.
Yeah.
Then Tiger Woods comes and takes over the mantle, the biggest sports brand in the world.
Yeah.
So Barcelona found themselves in a situation where when La Liga restructured and the lower teams no, we need all share in there. There has to be financial fair play. We realized oh no, these teams are running a debt. A massive debt.
Yeah, because that's what I wanted to ask. I mean, if I look at Real Madrid and we're seeing Ronaldo, making money outside Real Madrid, still being one of the highest paid, and then you look at Barcelona and you're like, you guys are paying this guy so much money. Usually the counter argument is, but do you know how much shirts he sells?
Yeah.
And you often wondered if this correlated or not, because the fact that their salary bill was that high. And now that they're loss making, you realize they actually couldn't afford to pay him that much, irrespective of how many shirts he was selling.
Exactly. And that was the misnomer, the fallacy of these sports assets, particular soccer, in that some of them were still being run, I dare say, as a community club, like Barcelona. Barcelona's a community team, right? It's owned by the fans, right? And I think whereas Madrid is owned by whoever owns Madrid.
Yeah, is it the government?
I think
It's the Spanish government. It's a long-running joke, but
it's the team of the government, right? And that creates that tension between the Catalans and the Blancos because it's not a political issue. But England, no families. Yes, there were community clubs until they started saying, no, a family can buy this. A family they can incorporate and then they can start selling shares. When Man U being the first ones to do that, and then everyone followed, changing the dynamics of that. That's a much more profitable league. Teams make cash. Yes, Abramovich did some fancy engineering with the Chelsea thing, because technically Chelsea were, I think, insolvent. For the longest time, but that was just financial engineering on their part for tax reasons. But British teams are much better.
the loan.
Yeah, the loan.
There was
to the
that
team.
massive loan that Abramovich had.
Exactly, the 3.2 billion loan, right?
Yeah.
So it was like a form of an LBO, right? Leverage buyout. Some of the forms of LBOs. So when we come to the reality that La Liga has the two biggest sports brands in the world, right, in Barcelona and Real Madrid, but they're poorly run financially, whereas the Premier
And maybe their TV rights also not worth as much,
League,
right?
no, they're not as
They
well. The Premier League is highest.
I think they
that's
were
where my
3
question
billion.
was coming. Actually, Doesn't it sort of create a cartel in EP and La Liga?
Yes.
because of the two teams. Because they everybody watches Real Madrid
and Barca.
And Barca.
For the most part.
No, that's true.
Yeah.
But the La Liga as a brand, that's the only. You don't even watch. Do you watch Real Madrid playing other 19 teams or 18 teams?
You see, I think that's exactly like Miles' point, that it's mostly the classical.
Yeah.
And if you're a staunch Real Madrid fan, you'll watch a Man City on a Wednesday, even a League Cup match. But you're not going to watch a Madrid play a Copa del Rey.
100%.
In fact, to the point where some of the, I don't even think even Super Sport shows.
No, they don't.
They don't show the Copa del Rey. But if you look at in England, how well is the League Cup rated? is managed in terms of they show that. You can watch most competitions, even the championship one.
But for me, that means the person that's responsible to make the money is La Liga. It's not even the teams.
Yes, and that's a great point.
It's like how does La Liga improve? How does La Liga compete with EPL?
Yeah.
How did it compete with the French league? Because this is not teams. This is just competing at the federal level. You know, I think in the Premier League it's the FA or whoever those guys.
Yeah,
you know
when the Premier League started in 91, right?
91, 92 season.
92 season. That changed the game because they became professional. They realized that soccer is a business and it's entertainment, right? There's a purist idea of amateurism where it's all about the sport. That died a long time ago. It's all about entertainment. We watch these things to be entertained. It's a form of wrestling. It's a form of WWE or WWE. It's a form of UFC. It's gladiatorial, right? We watch these things because we have winners and losers. We get involved. That is a commodity. Once they commoditize that by our viewership and Sky in particular is, we can pay for this, you know, and we can pay big money for this, following the Americans, you know, that really changed the dynamics, creating the EPL is outside the NFL, outside America, is the most expensive, the biggest sporting brand.
Correct,
in the world, with the Champions League maybe to a point,
Yeah.
right? So Barcelona found themselves in a very precarious position where there was a bit of a coup amongst the smaller clubs, like, no, we're tired of this. And rightly so, because Santander, these small teams couldn't do much. They were not winning much. You know, Atletico, if you look at the last 10, 15 years, only Atletico is the one that's won twice, out of 18 trophies.
How many Champions League spots do they have?
They have 3.
That's the other thing.
So that's another thing,
That's
I guess.
another thing.
Yeah.
It was the Premier League standard 4.
Yeah,
And then-
4. Because it's winning. The more Premier Leagues you win, the more championships you win, the more spots you get.
And then UEFA gives you more spots,
spots.
which is why the smaller teams, then their gripers, it's a duopoly between Barca and Madrid, and we can't compete. Like, and I think even brand wise, if you look at like the EPL, like from that 92 season that you mentioned, the way they rolled it out, like even you saw an improvement, like there was an injection of money in just the way it became broadcasted to the point where it used to be, I know with the BBC, even the UK, because I think we take for granted that in SA, we get access to all these games, first of all, in terms of broadcasting. Most people in the UK, you watch your favorite team in a pub, and some games, if the FA wants people to attend the match, we're not going to put Man City versus Man U on Sky. It won't
Regional
be.
blockout.
It'll be regional blockout. You have to go to the game or go to a pub.
Yeah.
So most of the pubs have the rights.
Exactly.
But worldwide, since 92, I just want to say, like, when they changed the game, they made it a brand and said, okay, not only are we going to start showing, like they had a thing where the BBC would get one game for
match of the day.
Match of the day would show highlights. Most people see the highlights of all the games and then one premium match. And it wasn't even between the big teams. They scrapped all that. It's now across the board and they took it global. And also to the point where it wasn't just the Saturdays, the weekend fixtures. They made it throughout the board and even recently bought back Friday night football. Yeah.
So can I ask if I were to try and maybe break it down a little bit for someone that doesn't understand, would you say the Premier League sells then their rights to DStv, for instance? MultiChoice pays big money for that, and can we assume that MultiChoice has to buy all rights? They can't actually buy a few games.
Okay, that's a great question in terms of the rights structures, right? So as of the last decade or so, because of now streaming, it's created a bit of a problem in that rights were bought in blocks. You'd buy the entirety, the 68 games, and you would have, MultiChoice would pay for the entirety of those games. Then streaming came along, in particular companies like Twitter and Amazon were like, no, you can separate those rights, right? You can have your linear rights, which are your
Terrestrial
TV rights, satellite TV rights, and then you can have your free-to-air rights are also now in play, right? You have your streaming rights. Now you have 4 classes of rights that you can offer as a league, right? And once we separated those time, it's more profitable because it's now an asset, right? You know what I'm saying? They make more money per asset. Give you an example of that. The IPL, the cricket, is now the second most valuable league in the world, right? After this.
Yes.
They split up their rights from linear and digital, right? Amazon bid for the linear rights, for the digital rights, Reliance, etc. They paid for the TV rights alone, linear rights, $3 billion. Whoever won, and that was Star. So Star won the linear rights, and who won? I think Reliance won the the digital rights. So now that asset class is worth $6 billion. For a league that's only played in India, watched most likely by Indians. And so they realized that we can make double the money by splitting up the rights,
which made sense. Yeah.
So MultiChoice had a monopoly on this for a long time. And their structures were that they would buy for the whole African continent. They got into trouble time and time again from the Nigerians. A company called GTV tried to buy. They bought some, and then MultiChoice came up and outbid them again. This was maybe 10 years ago. Yeah. And now you're finding a scenario where Botswana are suing MultiChoice that you cannot hold soccer rights exclusively. Same in Nigeria. The match of the day is back. We're now free to air, allowed to buy match of the days. MultiChoice not allowed to play in the match of the days. In Nigeria, I think there was a law passed in the last 2 years where they cannot compete, cannot be exclusively held rights. Because the EPL is now a political asset too. Ironically now, and so and let's be frank here, MultiChoice makes the entirety of its cash.
Yeah, from the soccer. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because
You know,
I was gonna ask you, in comparison to La Liga, how does that fare? Does La Liga then not sell their full rights? Are they behind compared to other leagues?
Bundesliga, Liga, Serie A are all behind. League One are all behind EPL. EPL is the trendsetter.
Okay.
Right? There are some political issues, social political issues. English plays
okay. And that one is Spanish.
Exactly,
Yeah.
Exactly. The irony, right, is that a quarter of the world, I think, is Spanish speaking, right? South America, Southern Europe, but they are not Anglophone like we are, where most of the world is the language of business, English. So India is a big market, China is a big market, Africa is a big market, and Europe is a big market. But they created a brand. That's how the EPL won. They created a band that they could monetize. They monetized it well. And then Man United's domination, right, with all these African, Caribbean, even Asian players, French players, there was a story, a narrative there that they could sell, and the English were very good at that. In particular, Sky, was very good at it. And Sky was partly owned until recently by Fox. Right?
Okay.
Fox, 20th Century Fox owns Sky. So MultiChoice is now in a predicament whereby they now have to start sharing their cash cow, which is football, which in particular is EPL rights. Whereas La Liga is trying to catch up. Where La Liga technically wins is they have El Clasico. El Clasico is second biggest soccer game after the World Cup final.
Correct. Yeah.
That's true. Yeah.
It's a massive asset, and they can.
Well, not anymore, but
Ronaldo's not there. That's all.
Ronaldo.
No, and also like Barcelona's always getting a beating.
And we can segue to that issue about why did Juan Laporte do what he did this English summer, our winter? Because you saw Madrid win their 8th championship, and win a La Liga, and it's personal. They take the stuff personally, such that it's like, I can't lose Leo, I can't lose the league. You know what I'm saying? And I'm never going to win a Champions League anytime soon. They were on a trajectory to
and playing in Europa League.
Yes.
I mean that's a significant cut to their already pressured income. I mean,
exactly, but more there to their pride.
Yeah,
they are Catalonia. They represent this idea of Messi, Rivaldo, Ronaldo, Figo, all these great Rodinho, Romario, these great Brazilian soccer players who built this brand, right? Now they're rival. And it's a personal rival between Barcelona and Madrid. Their rivals are winning championships in their face. They're building a new stadium in their face.
Yeah.
And that particular change motivates Laporte's like, I need to do something about this. That's why it impacted their spending, which I think is also dangerous, and we'll see how it works out. They started mortgaging their future for their present.
Yeah, I mean, maybe let's break that down a little bit. For some people, I found it interesting that Madrid did something similar as well. Selling to an American investment club, one investment company. But what Madrid did, which kind of made sense, they also sold their future income, but they sold their rights to the stadium. Events.
For events.
Which made sense. It's like you can hold concerts there if there's no soccer. Yeah. You could do so much more with the stadium because that's still a venue. That made sense to me. Yeah. And that perspective is like, okay, that makes sense. And then you look at Barcelona and what they tried to do, and they're like, okay, let's try and do the same thing. Yeah. But then they then went and said, let's sell our TV rights. Income, or our future TV rights income, as we've explained now that La Liga pays them all this money. And then they sell 25 years portion of it, and initially they sold 15%.
Yeah.
And I don't know what was your thoughts around that first sale on
I
its
think
own.
it's the pressure of Madrid getting better. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
Madrid outclassing them because the Bernabeu is going to be one of the fanciest stadiums.
Yeah, once they
Once
finish,
they finish the
yeah.
roof,
Is it not finished?
I think it is finished. I think the roof is finished,
Yeah.
but I think they're not full capacity yet.
Okay.
Barcelona also cleared one. I'm sure you heard that they're building. They're
Yes.
putting a roof on Camp Nou.
Yeah.
They're refurbishing the Camp Nou.
Yeah.
So these and we must also take a historical context in some of these behaviors. Whereas England is the bastion of capitalism in some respects, right? They've been dealing with money on an unemotional basis for a long time. Whereas the Lusophone countries or the Mediterranean countries, Italy, etc., you know, Silvio Berlusconi owns Milan. It's a bit more personal, and they take umbrage that Madrid are doing this to us.
Yeah.
So we must equalize at whatever cost. And I think the Catalans did that, respectfully, the Catalans. I think owing $1.2 billion in debt, they restructured some of that with a Goldman Sachs loan for $600 million of that,
Yes.
etc. I was astounded by the aggression of let's win now aggression. I understand it because the LA Lakers did the same thing. They mortgaged their future, you know, from LeBron, you know, etc., etc. The Yankees have done that in the past. Man United are about to do that now, you know, at least attempt to do that. Chelsea have done that, as has Man City. But these are the teams that have good balance sheets. Barcelona.
Yeah.
So
It's a community-owned club.
Simba, that story like of La Liga, Barcelona, Real Madrid sounds so familiar. I don't know if we can bring it home and look at Kaizer Chiefs and Orlando Pirates as well.
I think it's important for us to
I
talk
mean,
about Africa.
what are we struggling with? Because for me, like in South Africa, it's Kaizer Chiefs and Orlando Pirates.
And Sundowns.
Sundowns have the balance sheet, whatever, but like
They don't have that pride.
Brand.
they don't have the brand.
Historical brand.
Yeah, the historical
And,
brand.
and nobody.
Are you still angry from the 4-0?
Yeah, I know I didn't have a great week. That's fine, but you know, like what's so different? Why can't PSL teams do the same? I mean, like there's so much history in Kaizer Chiefs and Orlando Pirates. We saw big brands like your Vodacom plunging money into those teams, or a lot of your EVs and all of those. What's so different about?
It's a great question, mate. And we have to look at the historical context, right? I'm a pseudo-historian in that I try to understand things from the past, understand the present. And the PSL is only 25 years old, right? I think, give or take. In its current iteration as the DSTV Premiership, which is controversial because the broadcaster can't own the league.
Yeah.
Let's be honest about that. We have to be frank about that because then they control all the work product and they control how it's distributed.
Yeah.
Right? So they're paying these players and they're also getting money from the distribution piece.
Yeah.
I think, respectfully, I think that there is some controversy there. Because just like capitalism in Africa, it's still new to us, right? We're still learning these things. Understand that the English Premier League is part of 120-year-old history, right? Its commercial is also 30 years old, but because they understood satellite better, because they understood distribution better, marketing better, and because these are high-income countries, right, where you can pay £50 for a soccer seat, whereas here it's 10 rand, right? The income generation levels that are in the EPL or in Europe versus Africa are very different. Right. And so African teams, African leagues are modernizing ever so fast. Because if you look at the Zambian league, and Monsters has played it's been a force for good by giving leagues money for their rights, right? For the right to broadcast. And that's disseminated, I think, across all the teams in that particular league. As for South Africa, the reality of the situation is soccer is modernizing, right? And in that modernization process, it will take time to get someone who will look at it as an asset, not as I must own it for my family, or not something you inherit. You know what I'm saying? I inherited Chippa United, now I have to run it. You know, that's a different thing. Whereas if you look at Sixth Street or you look at Silver Lake, private equity look at these as assets, right? Private equity bought into AC Milan, private equity bought to buy into Serie A. This is an asset that generates income, that generates value, that valuation will increase over 10, 25 years. We are yet to get there, but from my vantage point, I believe Africa is, if the Super League, Motsepe Super League, will show you the point I'm going to make now. in that there is a valuation that's pretty high for African soccer rights. Why? We're the youngest continent in the world. We're mobile first, right? You know what I'm saying? So accessibility to our markets is much easier because of the mobile phone. Smartphone prices have, continued to deteriorate, for lack of a better word. I think this week I saw you can get a smartphone for about 3,000 Rand, right? Which is not a bad price for most people. Decent enough smartphone.
Can I tell people, if you wanna own a shop that sells those things are moving.
Yeah.
It's insane how many people actually buy phones in this country.
So, and South Africa, I think it's 101 penetration of mobile phones. Africa was still at about 2/3, in a previous life running what we were a mobile first streaming service because we realized that we have to get to people's pockets, not to people's TV screens, right? And so and then you look at our population sizes, right? Nigeria, Ethiopia, DSTV entered 2 years ago. The Ethiopian market. Ethiopia is the second biggest population in Africa. But it's one of the most fascinating markets in Africa because it's high ethnicity, but they speak one language. They are very, I say, not monocultural, but it's not as segmented as other African countries like Nigeria with the north-south divide, the sectarian divide. They are educated. They are business first, right? And funnily enough, with the Grand Renaissance Dam, they're going to be probably the biggest net exporter of energy in Africa in the next 10 years, right? And so DSTV realized that's another holy grail market. Who showed them that? China. China's a big investor in Ethiopia. DR Congo, whether you like it or not, the TP Mazembe, right? Won 2 Champions Leagues because they were based in the wealthiest province in Africa, in Katanga. Their owner was very forward. He paid those guys well, built a stadium. A Congolese team, which the country that struggles to govern itself for the most part, it's got a lot of bad history, complicated history. Managed to win a CAF Champions League, right? Because money was there. So if you look at it in that context, so where is growth coming? It's in Africa, right? And so it'll take us time, but because Sundowns are winning, Amazulu are in the picture in our local
Royal
context.
AM.
Royal AM.
Disrupting.
Those guys are now making money, right? Now people are these family-owned businesses or, oh no, I can generate where I can maybe make 10 million rands a year profit. Let me put it back in and compete, right? I think South Africa and Africa are not far away. But the key thing is, though, to that success, you need to be more entrepreneurial. And that's where the Americans are much better than us.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah.
And also, I like that what you said, that brand aspect.
Yeah.
Like having that mind being
Like you're selling entertainment.
Yeah.
Do not ever forget that.
Don't
But,
ever forget that.
I mean, the history is there. The people that love these teams, that love Chiefs, that love Pirates, it means a lot to them.
Yeah.
Big time.
But maybe to the owner, it's not just about making money, but actually providing entertainment and packaging it. And maybe that's what the country needs. How do we package PSL? And I actually think maybe one of the big problems for South Africa is actually the governing structure, like what he said. When the English Premier League sort of and the FA was formed, we have SAFA, and if you understand that SAFA is still not even a company, it's a problem. It's a problem.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's a problem, and this is the governing party that rules our national team, that governs our local team. So, like, if you don't fix that structure, firstly, it becomes very difficult because they're the ones that actually have to make the league entertaining. They have to negotiate the rights to pay all the teams. Similarly to what we're saying about La Liga.
because them being political makes PSL political. That's why you can have a chairman for over 20 years.
Yeah.
Whatever.
And I think even as an extension, what happens is, like, if the PSL who govern, one, they're not a company, they're not, for lack of a better word, if they're not going to market the league or be forward thinking, that great tradition between Chiefs and Pirates, it like Maz was saying rightly, it should be getting monetized because there's a real deep affiliation between those two clubs. Even the owners, where they played, the rich history, the story of Jomo, even Jomo himself.
Yeah,
like if you see old clips on
He drove the bus, bro.
like it's interesting.
He drove his players. I mean,
Jomo does everything.
Everything. Mr. Fix It. But I think I've seen old clips of, like, the Soweto Derby, where it was like the old Premier League, where like the standing seating, where it would be packed.
Yeah.
Like
The
it was
best. I've watched a ton of live sport. The best experience in my life has been the Soweto Derby. By far. Not for the soccer.
Yeah.
It ended up in a draw, which is fine. But it's the energy.
Energy,
I
yeah.
can only imagine Liverpool versus Man U or Classic, or I believe the Soweto Derby is up there with River Plate versus Boca Juniors.
No, it's good.
You know,
It's good. It's good. The lead up to it is really good.
It's a phenomenal sports brand event.
Yeah.
We monetize locally, but we have we're not as good as selling it internationally. Look at Al-Ahly, right? Al-Ahly, we know it's the most dominant CAF Champions League winner, right? Yes, it's an Arab Egyptian team, but Africans know that.
Yeah,
right? Africans don't know Pirates though. You know what I'm saying? Africans go, Chiefs, like, Chiefs is African team, cool. But they won't tell you, like, oh, who are they? What do they mean? Yeah, but they're the most developed industrialized country in Africa, but their brand presence throughout the continent is not as strong as TP Mazembe,
As Al-Ahly.
Al-Ahly, you know what I'm saying?
So branding for us was more local,
Very local.
for Kaizer Chiefs. When I say us, I'm saying Kaizer Chiefs.
Yeah, but it's a good question, Miles, you bring up, because I know, like, on the one radio station when the masks were done away with, they were asking people that now that we get to go outside, as we're calling it, obviously, are you going to consider going to a PSL game? And people, it's a conversation that's happened many times, because they say, look, in the UK, of course, it's an affordability thing, like your main thing, but there it's a season. People buy season tickets, and those are they're so hard to get for most of the big teams. They're generational. You get them from your grandfather. People don't even sell them, and like the waiting list for they even have classes. Like I once Googled with Arsenal, like the types of and waiting lists for season tickets. If you don't live there, it's insane. You see now, whereas now locally, what they were debating and saying, look, now that we're outside again, people support your local teams. And PSL tickets are not expensive.
Not expensive.
Even,
No, they're not, yeah.
Even the thing, even like I've been to 3 Soweto derbies, and similar, it's a brilliant experience, especially at FNB.
Yeah,
It's
at FNB in particular.
like just the everything about the whole experience is just crazy. And it's for me, that's something where if you look at, I watch a lot of sports documentaries. I just like how Americans do sports, the rivalry and the business. There's a brilliant story between Chiefs and Pirates, even dating back. But to come back to Simba's, I think sometimes it's the history, but also you need baby steps in combination with, we're still learning, like you're saying, and you also need the entrepreneur side of it to say, look, if the PSL will run not just the local football and the national team, they also run the grassroots.
Yeah.
If they are big with grassroots football, that's why if you look at like the Chelsea academies, even the academies for like a Nottingham Forest, they have so many players who go through pipelines, and then that's why like a Jamie Vardy story, people love it, that he's, through the way the system works, someone does not go from being a part-time construction worker playing at Fleetwood Town, then he goes to this team, then he makes it to Leicester, then they win the Premier League. Then they Sky milked that story and the story of Leicester and the story of N'Golo
And they
Kante.
sell it to everywhere.
They sell it to the whole world, you see now. So now, like we're saying, I know, like in Southern Africa, you will know of Chiefs and Pirates. But even the Premier League and the FA, where they really take it, they make sure that when they became a business, even the pre-season friendlies are made sure that, look, Europe, obviously the way it's structured, look, it's now when the intentions decided to be big. We sign at Jisun Park. We're going to make sure one of our pre-season tours as Man United, we're going to Asia, build a brand there.
Yeah.
And they work a lot in conjunction with like the FA and also UEFA and FIFA in terms of how they just want to build a global brand of football. If you really think of it, it's just being forward thinking in terms of how do we get, because ultimately you're selling an image, you're selling entertainment.
Yeah.
The Lakers at one time, in fact, the NBA at one time, they thought in like late 70s before Magic Johnson and Showtime, Dr. Jerry Buss at the Lakers, look for the documentary, look for the show. It's a great show. Came and did the same thing because the NBA was really struggling in the 70s. There was nowhere near baseball. Baseball, they call it America's pastime. The NFL has always been a juggernaut, but they didn't think the sport was going to make it. But through the Lakers and different owners, and also a big part of it is the salary cap.
Yeah.
I mean, so if you look at the history of like the greatest players in the NBA, there will always be Golden State can win it. A Bill Russell or some of the most successful players probably played for a franchise that does not exist. So going forward and coming back to Miles' perspective with essays, there has to be ideas in terms of selling the brand, not only just locally, because there is a rich history, but selling it even if you're going to start within Southern Africa. And there has to be the cohesion between like the teams and the PSL.
Yeah.
It has to be driven from the top.
I think it's also important to note that this is a controversial point, and I understand that, but I'm going to make it nonetheless. It's in Europe's best interest, in particular Francophone Europe, to work against CAF, right?
That makes sense, yeah.
To work against CAF, because if you look at the Belgian leagues,
is that why Napoli now?
The owner of Napoli, yeah.
which is madness. We must call it out for what it is. It's madness. Koulibaly is rated on the best defenders in the last decade, right? Him and Van Dijk, right? And his assertion that CAF, the AFCON, which is important to us, is preventative or prohibitive to him. Chelsea won championships with Michael Essien and his midfield punter, Mikel, coming back for AFCON. Drogba was famously an Ivorian, right? Sadio Mane, famously Senegalese. So this idea that you can't have guys go play for AFCON, play for their countries of origin, their home nations.
Out of interest, is there a reason why not June? Why not June, July?
You see, that's a great question. I don't know why, but it goes to my point of foolishness in that I think there's a concerted effort because we're a feeder leagues, right? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, the best players go there. Yeah.
So we feed from mostly West Africa, athletics, athletically they are the best, the fastest, and the cheapest. Because the black lives have been commoditized.
People will also say good looking.
Yeah, good looking. Commoditized as assets. Same with NFL, same with basketball. It happens in soccer. You look at Ligue 1, right? How many blacks play? It's phenomenal. I wouldn't be surprised if Ligue 1 is 80% black, mostly West African. Same with the Belgian and the Netherlands leagues, right? And then they feed into the four big leagues: the Liga, Serie A, Bundesliga, and the EPL. I think there's been a concerted effort. I have no evidence of that. There's just a speculation on my part to, in some respects, underdevelop us. Because once we get these kids, these young Africans, to go play, in the academy systems at such a young age, how many Africans have chosen to play for the European teams, right? Change nationality.
And also it will speak to why we won't even have a lot of slots for World Cup.
Yes. Yes.
Because then the rankings are going to go down and then the World Cup becomes, Europe
so the politics
dominated.
of it all is also very important. I think Sepp Blatter was notorious for managing the votes for his presidency through Africa, through payoffs. Infantino, I think, is also, he came to Zimbabwe, which is a bit of, we're nowhere near dominant. Zimbabwe nowhere near dominant, sports country league, right? But Infantino was there. Brazil played in Zimbabwe. You're like, how? You know what I mean?
Those
The writing is on the wall.
Those diamonds.
There's a lot of placating to our leadership.
Barcelona's coming there too, I'm sure.
Barcelona needs the diamonds for sure.
Zimbabwe now, visit Zimbabwe, right? So I think there's an effort there to keep us, and the NBA is here in a big way. The biggest player is African. Antetokounmpo is African. Joel Embiid is African, etc., etc. So in terms of talent, we probably have the most talent. Just raw talent, raw physical talent is mostly African, right? So there may be an argument to be made that our leagues are also underdeveloped to the benefit of Europe in particular. Same can be said for South America to a point.
It goes. So now my next question. Sorry guys, I hope I'm not hogging, but now Ligue A, what are they trying to build with the Mbappe contract? Giving him a super contract. Purely we saw it's making him arrogant now.
Yeah.
Because nobody watches League. I don't watch League. I just watch PSG.
Yeah.
I watch
Even then you watch PSG on Champions League.
On Champions League,
Exactly.
I don't watch their league games. I just watch PSG. Is PSG going the same route of building the brand, or are they trying to influence Ligue A to be something like La Liga? Or
That's a great question. From my vantage point, I would argue that I think the Emiratis, the GCC country, the ownership, just found an asset, that was easy to buy, and they pumped in a lot of money. Whether or not it was in Liga didn't matter. You know what I'm saying? As long as they could, I think they're built to win a Champions League, not built to win a Liga. So their business was, we want to be in a Champions League, we want to be part of the Super League teams, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say for me that made sense for PSG to join Super League, And I actually think the idea is not dead. The idea makes sense that you gotta have the best teams across all the leagues competing in some form of a regular competition that's outside Champions League. Because Champions League, by nature, it's
Knockout football.
it's knockout football. And for football fans, we all know how we feel like, nah, man, it was a bad game, injuries,
Yeah.
yada yada.
We had another
Whereas
chance.
a league is something that's actually, you can play all season through. You can see the consistency. So the idea itself to me still makes sense. And it baffled me that after all of this and Champions League guys came and said they found the money.
Yeah.
I think they've now increased the
So now
pot.
you support the Super League.
No, but I'm saying no, Champions League guys have increased the pot.
Yeah.
So it's almost like they were also ignorant to the fact that the teams were struggling financially, but also they were finding something that's going to be entertainment to the fans. I understood maybe too many games, the travel, etc. Some of the things were not very, very clear, but the idea made sense. And for a team like PSG, to me, that made sense. If you're PSG, you're competing with all these other teams outside Champions League. This is how you can build your strength to actually compete in Champions League.
Yeah, because I mean, if you look at a Bayern Munich, and if you look at a league, why I feel like, especially now with the resurgence with PSG being the team they are, to get viewers for a league where Dortmund every now and again will challenge Bayern, but we all know Bayern are winning the Bundesliga.
Won 9 in a row now, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's ridiculous. So to come back to the gladiatorial spirit at a very primal level, human beings, we want competition. We want, that's why we love the football thing sometimes more than the sport is the affinity you get with the team. The banter amongst friends, and once again the EPL commoditized that well because they answer that this goes well beyond just football, it's entertainment. Just to have bragging rights. Like a lot of people, I once saw a Guinness commercial that made me laugh that it was about statistics and they're showing how they said they made a made up statistics about how many Man U fans had never been to Man United. It spoke to that how global the brand is. And if you look at the things that Man U sells outside of football, it's insane. Like even within India, they sell tires, they sell noodles, and it's some of it purely on numbers. It's well done. But so for me, back to these other leagues and the Super League, it made sense because PSG with the investment and people coming and treat it as an asset, an emotional business decision. Exactly. So for them, they don't really see they look at Ligue 1 and the rivals between maybe a PSG and Monaco, they don't even speak to that. They speak to we pumping money.
And maybe I'm not sure hospitality wise. I mean, I think it's very easy to plan a trip to, if you're fortunate to kind of go to the UK, you'll fit in a football match. If you're going to Spain, you might fit in a match. And maybe in PSG, you never did. If you think about it, Paris has always felt like love city.
Yeah.
And now you have a team that's actually strong, and tourism wise, you might actually even go to watch the games.
That's actually a good point, but I saw an article. The way PSG moved, they did well in partnering with the Jordan brand, but even a lot of the fashion brands and celebs. That's why even you see now Jordan every now and again is in the stadium outside of the partnership. But the article is saying PSG went beyond just football. They wanted to make it like if you're in Paris, PSG obviously is the Parisian
It's
team.
It's
an itinerary that do you go
that makes
see?
sense, yes.
And it makes sense. And so the Super League as an extension would make sense why a PSG would want to be there, because if we're gonna randomly win our league at the trot, that's not gonna entertain people to watch that league.
I think, and this is the challenge I think leagues are facing right now. Firstly, it's the competition for people's time.
Yeah.
When our attention span, the recent reports have said is now down. When we were brought one, it was 3 seconds. Now it's less than a second attention span, right?
Yeah.
So people are now competing with streaming services, with Spotify's, streaming of anything on demand, right? And then you have social media as another on demand product that you're competing
itself,
with.
yeah.
So now football, or soccer is now in a challenging situation. Outside the religious nature of it, which is the British piece of it, where it is a religion, or South America, we should not forget, Boca Juniors, Santos, River Plate.
Corinthians.
I mean, when River Plate got relegated 3 years ago, there was a riot. They had to shut down Buenos Aires, right? It's a religion over there too. Same with Mexico. Is that the leagues are now challenged by the fact that we don't have a monopoly on eyes or attention as they used to, right? Linear helped them. We'd come and sit. Me and my brother, on Saturday match of the day, the BBC match, we used to get that, or listen to the match roundup, on BBC World Service. right? And now it's like, yeah, I'll catch it. Do the 5 games a day on Super Saturday. I'll watch, maybe the first 10 minutes of the Palace game. I'll come back for the Arsenal game, and I'll catch the highlights.
Yeah.
I watch the highlights.
Yeah, you'll hop a lot. Yeah,
Hop a lot.
it's too
Because
much.
I can
Yeah.
also watch Netflix. I can also go out. I can also read an article.
Yeah.
So leagues are now in a challenging situation where
It's
they
Disney
have-
Plus.
Exactly. Exactly. And now they're facing a situation whereby they are selling these big rights, right? These rights are expensive.
Yeah.
It's madness. Some of the monies are being paid for. NFL is a sport in one country. $100 billion is phenomenal.
So maybe let's quickly touch on that. Yeah. I think as a business model. So I mean, when I looked at it and I was trying to follow the money, so the league sells rights, whether it's basketball, soccer, whichever, they sell rights. Those rights are being bought by
Broadcasters.
Broadcasters then sell airtime.
Yes.
Which multi-choice to South Africans and and then corporates then advertise on multi-choice for eyeballs, which is us, the people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm like, ultimately,
You're the commodity.
they
You're the commodity.
right. And if you think about it, I'm like, how much can you keep paying for the same eyeballs?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because it keeps going up and up, and I'm like, wait.
There has to be a ceiling.
Well, the other part is we are officially 8 billion people globally. So maybe you can say the population is growing. Maybe you can say there was less people on TV, less people that could see. Maybe now more of the 8 billion can see.
But how much is an individual per capita income globally? How much are Africans able to spend on a DSTV compact subscription? Because DSTV, to my understanding, is in a bit of trouble because people are cutting subs. And the people are signing up for subs because of soccer, for the most part, right?
Yeah.
But it's still very
It's
profitable.
still
The
very
share price is
profitable.
doing really well.
But long term, how sustainable without competition, right? Which will be interesting.
Yeah.
They lose the Nigerian market, that's their biggest market, right?
Yeah.
Maybe second to the Africa. The Kenyan market is complicated, but I think they're also in the same predicament. In that, how much income do we think us as Africans, or the fan as the commodity, has, especially post-COVID? And now we're going into a recessionary environment. How much money is available to each individual? These 8 billion people, let's say 2 billion people is the addressable market, right? Of those 2 billion people, how many Pepsi, Coca-Cola, Chicken Inn, or McDonald's can you show them and then pay for that product? The price inflation of sports rights, I've argued, in the last 10 years,
It's ridiculous. Yeah.
and there's no
I agree.
commercial reason.
No, I agree. But
I can't see that.
but I don't know what makes it worse. The transfer market, the player salaries, how does it make sense for someone to be paid R1 billion?
Yeah.
I mean, like now, I think to make the case for DSTV from a South African context now, maybe I'm going to switch it up now. With the F1 coming, don't you think they are also hoping for that to come?
F1 is a fascinating thing. Netflix changed F1. Completely changed
With that documentary.
The documentary. But funny enough,
Did they sell their rights to Netflix?
No,
or
there was a documentary.
Oh.
They sold to Americans called. What's this company called?
But we still see it on.
jealous company.
We still see it on DSTV.
Yes, we
yeah.
do. When Benny Eccleston, right? That's his name?
Yeah, Benny Eccleston, yeah.
Sold the F1 in 2015. He sold to Americans. These Americans are clever dudes, man. And they realized that it's the most flashy of all the sports we have, apart from golf. It's the most bougie sport.
Yeah, Monaco.
Yeah.
It's only
Yeah, 20 spots available. Yeah.
And these guys are kings or princes. They call them princes.
travel the world.
Exactly.
Can you say that's like a version of chasing summer?
Yeah.
Yeah, because even the break now that they take,
The breakdown is in the summer, and then they go to Brazil in their summer. They come to the south in the summer. They go to the north.
I actually realized I've been F1 for years. Yeah. It's actually clever, yeah.
If you look at how they've redefined their brand, in particular in America, because F1 wasn't big because of going against NASCAR and going against IndyCar. What is it? But now, because the Netflix documentary, which is them marketing themselves, it's huge now. South Africa is just another way for them to sell. Coming to South Africa, it's going to be obviously only accessible to the creme de la creme.
Yeah.
Because the ticket will be, I speculate, 2,000 plus rand.
Yeah.
That's not starting with some of them 5K for
Hey man, that's so much better. Hey, we don't have to compete.
And so it's tricky.
I'm thinking of selling parking just to buy.
He stays like a stone's throw.
Oh, yeah, that would be interesting.
Yeah, we've made fun of him
I'm
about
gonna sell
that.
parking.
Yeah, even
You make good money, right? So I think it's interesting in that we will see this case for sports rights, sports inflation rights, by the way, sports inflation in rights, how that will work when this becomes a 25 race season. You know what I'm saying? We'll see if that'll work. Right?
Yeah.
But another key component to sports inflation, in terms of TV rights in particular, was post the global financial crisis, the quantitative easing pumped in a lot of money into the world.
Yeah.
And just like we saw the meme stocks, you know,
Yeah.
that was happening 10, 15 years ago with rich guys getting debt at 0% interest.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And they could just do the fancy LBOs where they buying these sports
Yeah,
assets,
yeah.
not a song inflating their value. NBA valuations, I think, have gone up 3-4 times.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, and it's mostly for their dead positions.
yeah, for their debt position.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, maybe, you know, in wrapping up, I'm not sure if Tsapo still have some space there, and maybe we'll take a break if need. But I was gonna ask you just two questions on my side. Firstly, it's just on the future of Barcelona, and the reason I want to ask about this is because I think a lot of people might think, you know, you're criticizing them because you're hating, but I think the real concern for me is you have a club that's selling its future earnings to access all of it now, take a chance on buying few players, and hoping that will, I don't know, bring you glory. But that's not going to bring you more money because the La Liga doesn't have more money. And the Champions League, yes, they've gotten more money, but I don't know how much more money they're going to get. And I'm asking all of this to say, they might have raised R1 billion to be able to register players, to get them registered, to be able to pay some of their salaries and circumvent these rules. But this might actually help you for 3 years, 4 years, because in 4 years, when those players roll off your payroll because they're older, you now need new players. You have sold 25% of your future income. You can't keep selling all your future income. So I'm just wondering what does that look like? And I know we all don't know how it's gonna go. They might find another way to make money and.
Exactly. Yeah.
But, you know, I'm
I
out of
think,
curiosity.
The one thing is the new stadium will be interesting because if they take say they're following Madrid respectfully to all the Cat fans. If they build a new stadium, they're going to do exactly what Madrid did. You know?
Monetize
They're gonna
that.
monetize the land,
Yes.
everything. And Barcelona is a top tourist nation, etc.
Tropical as well.
etc., etc.
Bit
Some would
racist, but
argue-
tropical,
Yeah,
yeah.
100%. You know? So
Very
the
racist.
issue of leveraging your future for immediate success has never been successful in the long run. In the long run, the New York Yankees, the Lele Lakers, right? You know, where they had huge wage bills, right? Like, guys, when are you going to win here? You know, the Lakers don't have a good draft pick until 2028. And it was LeBron signed yesterday for an extension. Guys, that guy will be 41.
90 million a year.
Yeah, dude.
41. What's the expectation? You know, I mean, LeBron is a phenomenal athlete. Take nothing. He is the second greatest player. I know for the millennials that may not be true. You know, Michael Jordan #1. But the long-term success of that strategy, I believe, has never been.
For me, that's it.
You know, the Yankees are a good example. Manchester United to a point, another great example, right? You know what I'm saying? Man City, even the example because they've never won a Champions League.
But they're pumping and pumping.
They're pumping money.
For me, it goes back to exactly what you said when you started. Pride.
Yeah.
It's the pride.
It's a pride.
They're competing. And
Yeah, but it's just that it's so weird that
Where's
no one.
pride gonna
I'm
take you?
saying, I'm
Yeah.
saying La Liga can govern that. You know, the Champions League can govern that, but no one can actually govern a club out of madness.
No.
Yeah.
no.
That's the thing.
That's the thing.
And for me, like, these amounts are staggering.
Yeah.
And even if you're banking on, like, it's the gist of what both of you guys are saying. Even if you go into hospitality, you have investors. At some point, it needs to translate into the pitch.
Exactly.
Even if it's we've seen like PSG with the Champions League, even Man City to an extent that a lot has to happen for you to get to that pedigree. So you might dominate the league, but it doesn't translate into European football. And also the other challenges for some of the teams is like, especially if you look at like a PSG and a Barcelona in a 2-horse race. If like, to Teaser's point, if La Liga themselves don't grow the La Liga brand, you know, then
you're limited.
You're limited to only really, and you've sold your future based on that.
The only thing is they could reduce the teams from maybe 20 to 16.
Well, they're increasing them to 32, so 36. They're doing the complete opposite. No, La Liga, no. The Champions League has gone to 32 teams, right?
Because Platini before he left, there's no more rounds, and that's another story.
I don't. You see, the challenge, which is the beauty of it, at its core component, it's sport, it's emotional, right? Laporte versus
and it's it's linked to history
Good point.
and family.
Good point.
And the political part of it.
Like that, we don't want to fall under the cane. We are Catalonia.
Exactly. That's a big for the.
Good point.
That type of mentality is what the Manchester United fans. I think we should touch on that, please.
Yeah,
because they're in a world of pain, right? Even if they get Casemiro on Monday, right?
Hey, I hope we get that guy.
And for me, Barcelona should learn. Like, there's another 60 million to Real Madrid, bro. Like, so you're all players.
Yeah.
Felt they were entitled to championships.
Yeah, we always had that thing. We always have that thing.
Look at Sapo
But the reality of sports, right? It's 11 versus 11 and 2 coaches versus 2 coaches. Soccer.
I think for Manchester United, we've been the best for so long. We got used to it, and then it was so painful for us to say, "Damn, we're not the best anymore."
But the beauty of the case study of Man U is that sports are cyclical. When it's cyclical, you can't.
Yeah.
I think we underestimate, and fans underestimate that. But the business side of what we're discussing here is that money is eternal.
Oh yeah.
And so for Manchester United, if the valuation is 6 billion, right, which I think is a fair valuation, which means it's double. No, it's
Chelsea.
Chelsea. I think it's slightly more than the Lakers, or New York.
Yeah, Manchester has fans. For
No.
days.
Top 5 brands is, I think it's the Dallas Cowboys, the Yankees, Man United, Lakers, and Madrid.
Yeah.
Madrid.
You know what I'm saying?
So that's been like consistent for like 10 years.
Yeah.
Those delayed rankings, Man U's been there for the longest time. So on the pitch, it might not translate, but because winning is cyclical. But which is why if you look at the pride part of it, that's for the fans. You can have all the glaze out protests you want, but they are coining it.
They actually thought listing would help.
How does a sports team list, based on a game of chance? For the most part, it's a game of chance.
We built it from the ground
But I
up.
understand. I mean, the financial world is interested. That's how you kind of get your money.
If you don't understand, if you look at the
You know, Simba, what I always tell teachers is that we built it from the ground up. We didn't buy it.
There's nothing like that.
You can build your tears.
No oil money involved in this thing.
So as Brentford, buddy, they build it from ground up.
Whatever.
It's like people have selective memories, but I will never forget the day United signed Rio Ferdinand for 32 million in the 90s. It was
Defender.
a central defender. It was unheard of. So look, there was the stage of Fergie. He had 6 seasons of not winning, and look, so that was also the other thing. I was reading an interesting case now where, over and above the frustrations of the money side, there was that DNA that Fergie built in terms of how he managed the team. So once the money came in, it just meant Fergie had access to the better players. But that time of struggling, and then he had like the 99 team with Beckham and Nicky Butt and all them, that was like the spine of how he ran the team. Youth-based team. So now he had money to throw at his idea, which he had fine-tuned. So now, which is why, like, if you look at a Van Gaal, you look at like a Mourinho, multiple winners elsewhere, but whether it's Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, let's try a former player, Van Gaal, Jose, it's not translating on the pitch, but on the business side of it.
Yeah, but also that's an organizational challenge because they just couldn't plan for the great leader they had, and then they don't give the next person time, and it made sense. Even in corporate, if you don't give someone time to implement strategy, definitely you're going to be jumping from this to this. The last question I wanted to ask you was which is actually seeming like it's gonna happen. Do you think Americans are going for European spots?
100%.
It actually looks like it.
Private equity is first and foremost.
Yeah.
Big time. The board Silver Lake owns a part of Serie A. CVC Partners owns
Yes.
a part of.
I see Elon is interested now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
Rock Nation is there as well.
Rock Nation owns the Sharks here. Silver Lake bought part of the All Blacks at a valuation of $1 billion. So Serie A, I think the CVC owns 20% on between between 9 to 20% of Serie A, they own part of the Six Nations. The European sports brands have got history. They've got a big global fan base, right?
And they don't have money.
They don't have money, and that's the beauty. Particular football teams.
Yeah, and they can't
Particular
sell
football
it.
teams.
And they can't.
But they've got the big asset. They've got Stadia.
Yeah.
Stadia is a massive asset. And what Abramovich did with Stamford Bridge is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Just like what Manchester are trying to do with the Oxford or the Old Trafford precinct. Liverpool are also going to try build that.
Yeah.
The Stadia, the state paid for those things maybe 100 years
It's a lot of money.
you know, so you're basically buying an asset and a song with a physical asset that you cannot put on your balance sheet that generates your capital. Not the sports, not the play.
I get you.
The infrastructure of yours makes you a lot of cash. And for me, that's the asset, is the infrastructure. Right? Not and the TV rights, but the infrastructure, you can monetize that, you know,
for anything.
Anything,
Yeah.
365.
Yeah.
Right? And you're hearing now, right, like the La Liga thing. When they put that thing, they must have done, Madrid, sorry, they must have done the math on this.
Yeah, I'm sure they did. Yeah.
You know, we're not going to put 100,000 people in that thing, bro. And thing, but we close the roof, we put a few hotels, we make it a precinct. We're going to make a cash back.
Yeah.
You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying?
Things around it.
Things around the
Yeah.
entertainment part of it, right?
Yeah.
Look at Las Vegas, right? Las Vegas, the stadium they built for the
Yeah.
Vegas Raiders.
The hotels.
The hotels, you
Casinos.
Know, they're gonna
Yeah.
build a NBA team is coming there the next 2 years. I mean, that's just printing cash. But what's the asset? The stadium. Kroenke's LA Rams Stadium, right? That thing is
Madison
amazing.
Square. You're actually onto something. Yeah.
Madison Square Garden with, like, with the Knicks.
Yeah, with the Knicks.
Like the Knicks for them, even like they haven't won it since like 79. But
They're still the most valuable NBA brand in the world.
There we go.
In conclusion, what Simba is saying, the asset is no longer the individual like Michael Jordan. The asset now goes to the property.
100%.
That's where it is now.
That's where it is.
The rights, everything goes to. It's no longer about Neymar, Michael Jordan, Ronaldo.
That's
now it's
that's
about
for
the
fans.
precinct.
It's about the precinct. That's
Yeah.
where the value is.
Yeah.
As of yesterday, Madison Square Garden Company, which owns the York Knicks, is spinning off the sports assets.
Yeah.
Right, into a different company and keeping the entertainment assets.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Because they see value in the
makes sense.
entertainment assets more so than the sports asset. LA Lakers, Staples Center now, Crypto.com, FX.com, whatever it's called. The Staples Center precinct, they have 3 stadiums or 3 precincts there. The Nike Theater, the Staples Center, whatever it's called now, and another auditorium. It generates income all year round. Right? You know what I'm saying? So, because sports are what? Seasonal. You know, you play them, you know, for 6 to 8 months a year. What happens the 2 months? You know, you're still paying rent or you're still paying your mortgage off that asset, right?
console rates and
You know what I'm
everything.
saying? What's the biggest gripe at Man U? What Gary Neville said this week? Apparently, Old Trafford is falling down. The theatre of
Correct, yeah. They haven't refurbed in a while.
Really?
Yeah. Because the shoulders are paying dividends. You know,
Yeah, big time. Those guys are fucking. Yeah, that's another gripe with like the for the players' trust.
So if you now look at but Tottenham, what did Levy do? Dan Levy did. He built an amazing stadium which he leased the NFL for the next 10 years.
So does it make sense why? Like, for I just want to bring it back. When I say us, I'm referring to Kaizer Chiefs and Pirates. Why more? Does it make sense for them not to own stadiums? Because
Dude, if tell them what
I know we can't afford it. But yeah, this is a Chelsea fan, by the way.
okay.
Stamford Bridge. Yeah.
I'm actually here to have a golf input on golf.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys know about
The Live Tour.
Yeah, Live Tour, right? And so I just wanted to talk about how that is currently revolutionizing golf at the moment, right? So you have the traditional US PGA, which obviously so old, and like you get a card, like you have to work your way up towards getting a golf card and whatever, and then you play on tour throughout similar to F1, right? What Live Golf is doing is quite similar to T20 in cricket, like playing golf in where there's loud music banging and all of those things.
Really?
Yeah, and so this is not really TV rights specific because it's actually backed by the Saudis, right? The public investment fund. Yeah. So and then, yeah. So they're basically paying these massive amounts. Like obviously, golf is over 4 days and stuff like that. And
3 days.
And then 3 days, and then you get the purse of like $20 million purse for the weekend. And if you're a participant, you actually guaranteed 6 figures, so in dollars, for that 3 days. And then with the tradition of USPGA, you actually now get banned, so you can't play you can't have 2 cards of the PGA card. So the traditional Masters, the Open, and all of those things, like, you basically get banned. And now quite a lot of South Africans have actually stopped playing
the PGA.
in the PGA and moved over for live.
I saw the PGA actually brought Tiger Woods back so they can bring more numbers.
That's
and Tiger Woods is like limping and stuff.
He was offered $1 billion though by Liv, huh?
For him to come back.
He actually rejected.
He's a brand for him. Billion.
So just talking about how sports is getting revolutionized, right? So you get these guys who are literally taking conservative sports. Golf is a very conservative sport, and just making it fun for everyone to go spend 3 days at a golf course. Like, sorry. That was just the point I wanted to make about how sports is really getting changed.
No, but
even the most conservative sport is getting changed.
Yeah, because I mean that's how
you don't want to talk about Stamford Bridge. Sorry.
No, but actually, is that the one with the Saudi group that Phil Mixon is involved in?
Same thing. He was the first one. I mean, he
got a lot. I saw he got it. Now that you mentioned, he kind of got a lot of flack because he's one of the bigger stalwarts.
Yes.
Tiger Woods of OG, the traditional golf as we know it. So if now he's moving, but it's, I think for them they're fighting a losing battle, because if you see, we saw it with cricket. Cricket was a perfect example, because no one wants to watch one match for 5 days where you might have a draw. Then from Test cricket, it became like
one day, also radicalized.
One
Terry Packer,
exactly.
You know,
one day like ODIs became a big thing. People loved the ODIs. I think even our local experience, and then it became T20, even T20 with the leagues in Australia. It was quite big because people want that entertainment. Like even when we mentioned like loud music at golf, my brain is like, loud music at golf. How's that gonna work? I mean, half the time they're trying to control the crowd. But I think what they realize is traditionally the model of those sports in their purest form, like Simba mentioned when we started with soccer, a lot of the purism thing is not really, you can't translate it into the entertainment aspect, which some people want. Americans have always been good at, even with pay-per-view. If I can't do a WrestleMania, I'm going to watch. Back in the day, you'd pay to watch that one event. Same thing with boxing, because it's just create the hype around that. So like, it's either, I think it's almost an adapt or die for some of these sports in terms of how they're structured.
And I think, as a final, maybe as a parting shot on my side, we're discussing sports finance, right, in its entirety. The question we have to ask ourselves as sports fans, right, who have played some of these things we watch now, right, or whatever level, and we're all amateurs, we're all played football on the street in a cassie with plastics or no shoes, right, is the viewing experience now, from my vantage point, as much as I love sport and I'm a sports junkie, it doesn't seem as pure, And why I say that, let's take the live example that was mentioned here.
Sounds like it's a power struggle.
Yeah, the USGA, the European GA, the PGA, etc. They are saying that no, we are the gatekeepers of this game. We are the ones who keep it pure. Right, Augusta didn't have black members. For the longest time.
We can out money.
You know what I'm saying? So old money has this whole aristocratic feel to it. New money says to hell with that, right? We are here to entertain, but we have to get paid, right? And for me, my challenge is that this idea of getting paid, how sustainable is the commoditization of our eyeballs? Right, and how good is it for the sport where Kylian Mbappe, who I love, who rejected Madrid, right, is now having a beef with Neymar, another young man, multi-billionaire, millionaire, etc., etc. It's not being publicized. Right? Just play soccer, my guy. I don't need to hear your lovers tiff, in the thing. But that's what it's become. The entertainment piece of it has become a soap opera. We watch Man U because we want to see Gary Neville, after the match go mad, just like the Arsenal TV guys. We don't watch for the result is irrelevant. We're watching for the entertainment, right? And I think there's a problem there because we're not necessarily judging these sports anymore on skills. We're not necessarily looking on merit. Like, oh no, that guy is just brilliant. You know what I'm saying? No. It's how many shirts can he sell? How what's social media like situation, etc., etc., etc. Right? Cristiano Ronaldo's got the biggest social media following in sports, right? Over 100 million followers on Instagram, etc., etc. And I wonder what that will mean for our children. Where these things will not just be TikToked, right? Be reduced to 30 seconds, 1 minute of entertainment, and I don't know how sustainable and how that will be good for us as sports fans, and how that will be good for the sport itself. My only counter argument to that: athletes, if leagues are being paid billions of dollars, athletes must be paid also because they only work for 13 years, 13 to 15.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah, I think it does speak to the people that are pure. Unfortunately, do get old.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the new generation will decide what they like.
Exactly.
And that's why you would have seen. I think one of the ideas in the Super League was 20 minutes halftime.
Yes.
Put
like
a show in the
Put a
bit. You
show
know
in
what I
the-
mean? So and unfortunately, if the new fans, the guys that go to the stadiums, the people that buy the t-shirts, if that's what they like, unfortunately, like sometimes we must also just accept the evolution. You know what I mean? Like it comes with it, and the same way that Ronaldo came with celebrations.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like so sometimes I think some of them they are evolution.
Yeah.
However, like you are right. You always have to actually like try to keep to the core of what something represents in whatever nature it is. And when you look at what's the original one from baseball?
Yeah.
Like lack of just reinvention. You know what I mean? So you can see where sometimes if we don't get that, it can become a problem. But I do think they just have to find the balance between the two, because just like anything, you gotta be able to find the balance to make it inclusionary because once you cut out the kids,
It's a wrap.
you know what I mean? Like the TV rights won't mean as much. You know what I mean? And something else will take their attention span. So that makes sense to me. But just that it's a very difficult one. And that's why sometimes I always hate this when someone makes it that there shouldn't be gatekeepers, but sometimes you do need gatekeepers for that exact reason. They still try to keep the essence of what something stands for.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I hate gatekeepers, but sometimes I even acknowledge, I'm like, damn, because like you can't just have open doors for everything.
Yeah.
Someone has to regulate. Someone has to be like, come on, guys, don't over.
There has to be rules and structures. Yeah. Look,
Yeah.
even like imagine if it's just open, like you're saying, how many spin-offs of every sport can you have?
Yeah.
And the thing is, if you look at like the wages and some of these things, with the amount of money that is floating around is obscene. And so now I guess you don't want there to be a bubble within football where clubs go.
We are in the bubble.
Where now you wake up one day and then it gets to the point where you can only it's like steroids in sports. You can only juice so much.
So much.
Yeah.
And then it gets to a stage where now it's just not financially feasible at any scale. The next thing, that's why you need the gatekeeper. So if we don't have some regulations,
Yeah, the players gotta take pay cuts. The stadiums gotta reduce prices. It's gonna have
And
to
that's why
happen.
Barcelona is the perfect case study.
It's
of
gonna
this.
happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because City, right? Yes, they have Emirati money, right? Or Arab money, right? They haven't won a Champions League. That's their mission,
Yeah.
right? Right. The same Chelsea took them time to win a Champions League, but they achieved their goal. It's interesting for me, to your point, is that there must come a point where these PEDs, performance enhancing, the money is a PED, doesn't work. And right now, for City and for PSG, it's not working.
Yeah.
And it may never work, particularly for PSG. It may never work.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, you know? And the question then you have to ask yourself, why did you do it?
Yeah.
And that's the challenge. We'll see with Newcastle. I mean,
Yeah.
that's, Saudi money, how is that going to work? St. James Park is a great stadium. They play rugby there too.
Yeah.
There's a great asset in there, but you're doing this for prestige, right? You want
Yeah.
to win Champions League,
Yeah.
you want to win the Champions League in particular.
Yeah.
Only time will tell.
yeah,
This is quite interesting. Yeah, we'll have to circle back again. Maybe towards the end of the season.
do a recap and see.
Yeah,
After
and
the World Cup, I think. This money World Cup, right?
yeah, and maybe we'll spend less time on the financials, but the other aspects of it. Just because there's always so much to unpack regarding this topic. But thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me, John.
This is quite lovely. It's very nice to actually to get these insights from you. I think the way the podcast started made me very curious. I want to know about what you did. your streaming service, your your business that you had over the years. I think that definitely deserves a topic. We have to unpack that, and we have to spend some time talking about that, because that makes sense. And then on the last part, I just wanted to say some. I don't know if you have your last words before I put the announcements, and then we'll shut it.
Yeah, no, I'm just good. I'm good. But thanks so much for coming. Look, it was really insightful. I think, and like Tisa rightly said, I think a lot of the stuff I did mention at the beginning, we kind of touched on it, but it's such a topic over and above us being football fans. There's so much to get there. So there is actually definitely a case to have a follow-up episode with you, maybe post the league ending or even the Qatar World Cup, in terms of how there's been a lot of controversy around that, because it's purely a money play. Let's see how it plays out. There's a lot of issues there. So then we can maybe, if need be, walk back some of our takes. But besides that, just have a holistic look at how things are going, because it's going to be interesting even outside of teams and finances. But on my side, just thanks again for coming through. Great insights. Yeah.
I think the last part for me is I'm gonna wait for you, Tapo. Should I? Because then, we gotta put this on camera. I don't know if anyone is still listening. But we'll break this down for YouTube. It's always easier because now that you have YouTube, if you want this stuff, it's gonna come out. We're gonna put out some match as soon as it gets warm. It's quite cold at the moment.
Especially in Joburg. I thought the worst of winter was over. Like, we're now at the tail end, but the weather, Mother Nature had different ideas.
So if you like this, hit us up. This is gonna come. Subscribe to our YouTube, subscribe to our Instagram, Twitter, our social media stuff. I think we're gonna try and actually pack a couple of episodes over the next couple of months before December, just because I think the boys really get busy. It's quite insane. But the content has to come through anyways. So subscribe, stay tuned, because that's the best way we can actually get to you. And then I think as Cash mentioned, I liked what you said in the beginning. The idea of actually explaining some of the stuff to you before the episode or after the episode, if that's something you really want, just let us know. We can be able to do some shorter episodes in between single conversations that can maybe break down some stuff for you. And then lastly, the shout out to Balon Dolozi for this great space.
Definitely.
You need to tell the people that you're giving your pension to give them money. And then Pedro will maybe fly us all over the country.
We would definitely appreciate. Gents, thank you so much, and thank you to Miles handling. Obviously, he's part of our host, hence he just disappeared in front of the cameras. But as always, thank you to our viewers, our listeners. This podcast is available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever you get your podcasts. And for those of you who are visually inclined, we are on YouTube. Please do like, subscribe, bell notification icon. Anytime we drop an episode, you will get a notification. As always, pass the podcast, share it within your circles, and help us grow the brand to the merch. And thank you, gentlemen, and we'll see you on the next one. Cheers.
Cheers, guys.